Chairperson. MIPA board members. Kamal Sadian, consultant at MIPA. Chairperson of the ACCA Mauritius Network Panel and other panel members. Our distinguished speakers, Piatino, Piadoualali, and Siapabu. Our moderator, Familia Bussier. Representatives of the media, dear members, partners, and guests. Good evening and welcome to this post-national budget discussion forum organized in collaboration with MIPA. As he tabled the budget for fiscal year 2023-2024 last Friday, our Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, Dr. the Honourable Ranganathan Padeachi, set out to dare and to care. Our economy has shown unimaginable resilience in the face of the worst economic crisis we have witnessed. We have emerged from the economic downturn stronger, and according to the IMF, Mauritius last year figured amongst the top 20 fastest growing economies. While we have witnessed renewed dynamism, Honourable Padeachi announced measures aiming to strengthen the foundations of our economy, to continue to transform our economy into a sustainable economy, and to build the future that we all deserve. Let us analyse the budgetary measures at today's forum to ascertain how truly daring and caring they are. We are honoured to welcome this evening three eminent speakers who will comment on various aspects of the national budget. Yadina, consultant and economist, will intervene on the social impact and budget figures. Riyad Ouadari, Director International Tax and Transaction Services at EY Mauritius, will carry out an analysis of tax implications, changes in international tax, and impact of measures announced in the budget on the offshore sector. Glensia Pavu, Chief Executive Officer and Senior Partner at HLB Mauritius, will cover measures impacting on business enterprises, on the SME sector, and our sustainability agenda. All the more so as we celebrate today the World Environmental Day. And as you know, environmental issues are a key aspect of sustainable development. ACCA and MIPA sincerely thank our three speakers for kindly accepting to share their views with us today. The three presentations will be followed by a Q&A session, and we shall then invite you for networking cocktails after Mr. Kamal Sadian, consultant at MIPA, delivers closing remarks. I would also like to extend our deep appreciation to Pamela Bussier for moderating today's forum. Pamela is the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director of Jubilee Alliance Mauritius. She is a corporate finance executive offering over 30 years of experience in building, leading, and advising corporations through complex restructuring, international expansion, and capital markets. A leader with a track record of documented contributions leading to improved financial performance, heightened productivity, and enhanced internal controls, Pamela is a fellow member of the ACCA and a holder of an MBA specialized in international business from Coventry University in the UK. She is also the past president of the Insurers Association of Mauritius. Without further ado, I thank MIPA for their partnership and invite Pamela to take over. I wish you all an insightful forum.
Thank you all. I would like first to thank ACCA Mauritius and MIPA for organizing this event. It is a pleasure and an honor for me to be the moderator of this budget discussion forum. I would also like to thank our three panelists for helping us understanding the impact of this budget. Without further delay, I will introduce Mr. Pierre Dinan, who is our first panelist, literally. So, Pierre holds a BSc in economics. He is also a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. He was a senior partner at De Chazal Dumais for 20 years until he retired in June 2004. He was also director at Multiconsult, a global business management services company, for 12 years until 2004. Pierre was the founder chairman of the Mauritius Institute of Directors. He has served for several years as an independent member of the Monetary Policy Committee set up under the Bank of Mauritius Act. Pierre has published 3 books on the economy of Mauritius and is a regular contributor to the local press on economic and financial issues. As Maggie just said, Pierre will intervene on the social impact and budget figures. So I will come back to you for your intervention. Thank you.
Good evening to you all. My brief this evening is to sort of set the background against which this budget has been elaborated. That's the first part of my intervention. And the second part will be a look at the social aspects of the budget. My colleagues here will look at the economic and business aspects and tax aspects. So the background to this budget. I think it's convenient to start with some figures, some economic data, basic economic data of our economy today. GDP, that cake we produce every year and out of which we are going to get all our revenue. GDP for the existing financial year is at 614 billion, 614. But for the coming year, 23-24, it is estimated at 722.9 billion. Of interest is that the growth rate from one period to the other period is estimated at 8%. 8% is a high figure, and it is a high figure because we are getting out of the COVID difficulties, and that's why it is 8%. And the estimate for the following years, 24, 25, 25, 26, is 5%. We still have to see whether we will make this 5%, because when COVID came, we were fighting to have a decent economic rate. So this 8%, let's not make a lot of things about it. It is because we are not comparing like with like. And this is a big mistake sometimes people are making. Now, what do we do with that GDP, that national cake we produce every year? We spend and we invest. And we are expected out of this GDP of 23-24, 722.9, to invest at the rate of 21.3%. Make a calculation, 21.3 out of 100, we are left with 78 something, 78.7. Consumption. Come back. So the recurrent, the budget. These were the national country figures. Now the budget itself, the national budget for 23-24, recurrent revenue is estimated at 24.5 billion. Expenditure 24.7, leaving a deficit of 0.2 billion. And that's on recurrent. On consolidated fund. Now, a capital fund, revenue 0.3 billion, capital expenditure 3.0, the capital balance negative 2.7. Overall, consolidated fund, capital fund, budget balance, deficit 2.9. 2.9. This will mean that the public sector debt is estimated by the end of June 24 to equal 71.5 billion rupees. At the end of this year, June 23, it is estimated to be at 79 billion. In other words, there is some estimate that public debt will go down a bit. Not surprising and good to hear. After all, the economy is running better now, COVID being gone. This being said, because I think that after all, the budget is important, but equally, if not more important, is how our balance of trade and our balance of payments evolves. And it's good there. We note therefore that because it is in the balance of payments that you are going to have your reserves. Those reserves will badly need to finance our imports. And therefore the international reserves at the end of next year, it is estimated that they will be equal to 310 billion rupees. Now, translated into USD, 6840 million USD at the rate of 45.25. God knows what it will be in actual fact by the end of next year. But for the time being, the budget has made it clear that they have used the conversion figure of 45.35. So that is it. That's a quick background, if you wish, of the budget. The budget, but seen large, in large, right? The budget figures. Now, it is also interesting to see what the minister and his officers are estimating that will be the growth rate. Now, I think I mentioned that the growth rate for 24, 25, 25, 26 is estimated at 5%. This is the sort of thing they think that we should be able to realize 5%, forgetting COVID. Right. To note that these rates are higher than the world economic growth rate, which for the year 23-24 is estimated at 3%, and for the next 2 years also 3.2. In other words, we are projecting in this budget that our economy will grow more quickly than the world economy. Okay, well, just it's good that we try to do that. Being given, but really be aware that we are so much dependent on the world economy. Our economy is extremely open to the world, with our imports and exports representing like something like nearly 100% of GDP. So this is, in a nutshell, the situation with the budget, the cadre within which it has been built. they have been asked to look at the social impact. The social impact for 23-24, the social protection budget is estimated for this coming year at 67.58 billion rupees. That means nothing, just looking at one figure. Let us compare it with other expenditures of government for that year. I have a list in front of me. General public services. This is what public servants and the whole system cost us. 59.45, less than social protection, which is 67.58. Public order, 15.25 billion. Economic affairs, 13 billion. Environmental protection, 1.4. We are not yet there. Housing and community services. There is some social aspect to that. 3.36. Health, free hospital services, 1.6. Recreation and welfare and culture. There's a lot of mention of culture in the budget about the cigar dances, etc. Recreation, healthcare, religion, 1.43. Education, very important, 20.4. None of these items equals social protection, 67.58. So, when the Prime Minister talks of socialist budget, is this what he meant? I think you did this. Social protection, 67.58. Now, what is this 67.58 billion made up of? Old age. Within this 67 billion, old age, 47.6. So, out of all these figures I have told you up to now, none was at that level. Old age, 47.68 in this coming year. In the following year, 55 billion, as in 2014. So, this gives us an idea of how, can I say, costly, or how dear to the budget makers are the old age people. For us to decide. I must say, there is in the budget a little hope for the younger people, or for the babies. There are some measures that have been made, and I suppose especially pregnant babies will be happy. There is not that much. We are up on the road to a lot of money having to be spent on old age pensioners. And this is why I dare to say that we have a demographic bomb in front of us, because we are getting older and older. I won't be against that person, but we are not having many babies. And how are you going to develop this country if you to have more and more old people, all happy to have pensions, and who is going to produce it for them? There are no babies here, but their parents should tell them that as they grow and as they get a job, hopefully, that there might be rather there would be a lot of pressure for increased taxes, which of course none of us wants to have. So this is the situation. This being said, there are a number of good points in the budget concerning social matters, and one cannot be against that. But it is interesting to see one of the sections of the budget. I refer to section of the budget speak, section 558, if you wish to look at it, where the minister has taken care to tell us how many people are going to benefit from these various proposals. I quote, old age, 350,000 persons. So, a monthly allowance of 2,000 rupees for 200,000 persons. Lower tax, 150,000 persons. I will not continue the list, but I would like to make one comment on this decision to offer, I think, 20,000 rupees to young, new majority, which also means the first voters. So this 20,000 rupees, I can't complain about it, and I know many parents are already very happy. I personally hope that these parents will be able to control their children who are now free, not to go and buy. And to my mind, it's already it's still time. Government should offer this 20,000 rupees as a bank saving account. Bank, teach saving apprenez l'épargne. Teach saving to these young people, and not just 20,000 rupees for whatever is agreed in, but also including things which are not allowed. I'm thinking of drugs. So there we are. It is some good thing here, among the social measures, loan support of 1,000 rupees for 70,000 households, allocation familiale mensuelle for 48,000 households. So there are some offers which one can't complain, although one, you know my views on this, which I know is not popular. We should help poor people. People are at the bottom of the revenue table, not people who are at higher up. And if you help people who are at the bottom, you can give them more than you are giving them now. But ciblage is not the sort of thing politicians on either side like. So I have tried to cover rapidly the situation, and I think I make it point out.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think your intervention has helped us understand a bit more on the social impact of the project, which was rather, I would say, your way of getting us through it. Thank you very much, Pierre. I think we can give me a big word of applause again. So our next panelist is Riyad Ouadari. So Riyad is the Director for International Tax and Transaction Services for EY, and his client portfolio includes resident and non-resident clients. His work includes compliance and advisory engagement, span the domestic tax laws and their interaction with other legal instruments such as double taxation treaties. He is known for his objective and impartial analysis of tax policy changes and rulings issued by the various appellate bodies. He has acted as independent witness on various fiscal matters, such as arbitration on a VAT case between a parastatal body and a private limited company, and is an independent expert on the application of the UK-Mauritius tax treaty to trust the UK first tier tribunal. So Riyad will take us through the analysis of the tax implications, changes in international tax, and the impact of measures announced for the offshore sector. Riyad, the floor is yours. Let us give him.
Thank you, Paula. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I tried to summarize my viewpoint on the speech made by our last Friday. For a number of years, the speech is accompanied by guidance note, the explanatory note, and many times the most important measures for businesses are in this explanatory note. And one of them this year, which I picked up, is on share transfers. I'm hoping that we'll have clarity when the bill will be issued. That measure seems to say that when you sell shares and there is a requirement to have a certificate from a professional accountant, the land transfer tax evaluation duty is based on the higher of the value of the certificate or the deed of transfer. We all know that in the context of share transfer, generally it's the lower of the value of the shares or the value of the able to decompliant asset of the company. That's known for a number of years. This change is in the annex, as far as I know. So I'm hoping that when we have the bill, we'll know exactly the extent of that measure, which was announced by the Minister in his speech, which could lead to a higher transaction cost on these shares. So that's a one point of, if you want, warning I want to give you when you analyze the budget. So reading the budget very soon is not a complete exercise. You have to analyze the explanatory note. The first point, I think we all know about it, is the introduction of a progressive income tax system. Is it good or bad? Debatable. There's one common point, it benefits all individuals who, whether resident or non-resident, generally. And it's complicated now, we have potentially 11 slices of 11 banding, whatever you want to call that. I don't know whether you've noticed, I tried to reconcile the numbers in the speech. When like on a speaking exercise, I tried to do it for 1 2 hours. I couldn't understand the numbers. In the speech, the minister said that the first 398,000 rupees would be taxed at a 0 rate. And then he went on, that's 40, another 40, 60, went around, and then he had another rate of 20%. And then at some point he said that I'm going to increase the IET to the extent that there's no tax rate. What does that mean? I don't understand. It looks like the category IET will be increased from 325,000 rupees to 390 rupees, and that first banding of 0% is not on. So the first rate, the first 40,000 rupees, that will be taxed at 2%. I think that will be the outcome, but I don't know. I think he's looking into the numbers. Who knows? He might be saying, well, I increase the IT, I also keep the 0% tax rate. That would be too good to be true, but let's wait. It was a bit, I don't know how it happened. I mean, I've never seen that. I mean, we tried to work on various scenarios on Friday evening, but was unable to reconcile these numbers. The maximum rate is 20%. Would it have been lower? Debatable again? I think yes, but then some people will say that we need simplicity. To the extent that an individual has a business in his own name, then you're looking at the rate of 20%. If that business was run by the company, you're looking at the maximum rate of 17%, so 15 plus 2% CSR. So would it have been better if we had another set of rules for income from businesses? Again, it's debatable. But then it's the disparity gets probably something I would say undesirable when you look at a person having a society, a partnership, where the partnership pays CSR at 2%, now the partnership is a flow for entity. With a maximum rate of 20%, you're looking at 22% on your business profit, compared to 17% if that's a business run by a company. And I think we don't want to have a system where you encourage tax arbitrage. You don't want to have a structure where you encourage people to do tax planning. We don't want that. We want certainty. So to that extent, I think it could have been much better. And 11 slices or 10 slices mentioned, I don't know. That would mean that employers would have to change their software, configure the system, the software system. So that's some homework for them to do. And again, generally, it takes into effect in the month of September with the purity basis. So a lot of homework for employees. So I think generally one can see it's a welcoming measure because it benefits all, especially those people who are subject to the solidarity levy. So it's a welcoming measure to that extent. I think the better measure was the removal of the tax on dividend income, the levy. And that's clear to me. I know some people had doubts. I think it's clear if you repeal the levy, then the 10%, max 10% on dividend is gone. We had many reasons to say why we should be taxing dividends for only certain resident individuals, including parity among shareholders, resident shareholders, non-resident shareholders. So that I think is a welcome measure. But I wouldn't say it's a gift. It corrects it annually, which he created himself. So I wouldn't congratulate him for that. He corrected something he did bad a few years back. And are they planning? I think yes. If you want to distribute dividend, distribute it in July, not in June. Is this something America can challenge? I think no. To me, it's an acceptable tax planning. Remember, you're differing the income. You're receiving in June, you're receiving in July. So that's perfectly legitimate. We did it a few years back, some 10 years back, when our Prime Minister, he was a Minister of Finance, he introduced tax on dividend then that was repealed again. So we differ the dividend distribution and nothing happened. But these days, MRO is fairly aggressive, I would say, so I wouldn't be surprised that this is a scheme, which to me, personally, is not a scheme. It's an acceptable tax planning. So that's the bit on dividend income. At least he was courageous enough to repeal that measure. So on that basis, I think we'll give it that piece of credit. Corporate tax for banks. We know now banks will be taxed at a rate of 5% and 50%. And there were regulations which provide that banks will be taxed at a rate of 5% on the excess of their chargeable income over 1.5 billion, and the base year, it's a bit complicated, which effectively means that a large portion of their chargeable income were taxed at the rate of 5%. The regulation applied to only 2 year assessment, so it didn't apply for the year assessment 2022 and 2023. So we kept asking Minister of Finance and MRA, well, when are you going to issue the regulations? Because when you complete the tax return, it was catered for in the return that you could benefit from that incentive to have your higher chargeable income taxed at the rate of 5%. It was possible. But then we don't have the regulation, we don't know what to do. And the challenge we have in practice, you know that tax return, who designs it? Who has a say in that return, like based on monetary control, related party transactions? Who designs it? It's the MRA. You don't have any recourse against the MRA. It's the MRA, it's the prerogative of the MRA. So when you complete the return, we are unable, even if the client said, well, I'll take a very conservative approach, I'll pay the charge at the rate of 15%. The bank wasn't able to do so. So that I think is unfair. And what next? The returns have been filed, the tax and the ABS system have been paid. What next? So probably the banks being very conscious about their reputation these days, they will try to do an amended return. There are penalties, interest penalties. Would they waive that? I think, to be fair, yes. One should be able to waive the interest and penalties. But when you set it out amended return, then the time limit for the 4 years, the statutory limit runs for the day you set the amended return. That's just the bad side when you set an amended return. But I think in the current environment, I think I'm hoping everyone would waive the interest and penalties. Probably the Minister of Finance as well, they think that banks are very profitable. And you remember when we had different rates, we have tax incentive companies and non-tax incentive companies being taxed at 35%, 35%, 15%, and we change everything else back to 15% for all companies. And then government introduced also now levies to cater for the loss of revenue. That's the reason. But still, increasingly, clients are looking for predictability and certainty. That's what we're looking for. Our clients want to say, well, we don't want to pay, but let us know in advance. That, I think, it was a surprise for us. Another measure linked to the banks, the change in the levy. Now, there will be one single rate, irrespective of the level of chargeable income. It is chargeable income on businesses with residents, so that now that there's only one rate, 5.5%. That levy is in the VAT Act, but I think probably it would have to be changed again, and we'll bring it in the Income Tax Act. The levy, I think you know about the blue rules, and some of the banks and merchants, they will be caught under the blue rules. And the question is, would that levy be considered as a covered tax? So, when we complete the covered tax, do we include only the 15% tax, 5% tax, whatever the rate, plus CSR is definitely an income tax? What happens to the levy? It's the VAT Act. Would we include that as covered taxes? I think yes. If I am to summarize the definition of covered tax, the globals, I think substance of reform, you may have a different point of view. I think it's not a term of a tax, it will count as covered tax. And when you add that up, that tax, the levy, the corporate tax, CSR, it's a lot for banks. It's a lot. Maybe one alternative would be to come up with a formula on the same basis as the globals. Then at least we have a sort of minimum tax. The top-up tax then would have been collected by merchants and not the government. So that might, I think, might not be a better approach. We have an exemption on interest income for CIs and closed-end fund. that exemption has been increased from 80% to 95%. Probably, again, the conditions related for the co-income generating activities that has to be complied with. And what we are looking here is certainty, and with a recent trend from the MOA, I'm personally at a loss. When is it that conditions are met? When we have cases where there's no doubt to my mind that co-income generating activities are in Mauritius, but other cases where I think MOA could have challenged, but where they always say, no, this is fine. And remember, the whole idea of this reform was to avoid ring fencing. But what in practice we are seeing is ring fencing, which I can't understand. And those cases, if you also say, where are the co-income generating activities? It's all in Mauritius. I mean, some people, I'm seeing one director here, he used to be director at MIPA, he has a different point of view. The point of view is that it has to be in the audio course of business. I mean, we respect this point of view, but I think nothing in the Act or the regulations compel a company to benefit from the exemption only if the interest is derived in the audio course of business. So the test to me is where are the activities relating to the interest income performed. And one of the key activities to me is the risk, insofar as the interest is concerned. In many cases, the risk is in Mauritius and no other country. If you're looking at a back-to-back, then I can understand a back-to-back, the risk is parked outside of Mauritius. So then it's difficult to explain that it's in Mauritius. But most cases, it's in Mauritius and we can evidence it. So that's ongoing. Investment tax credit, it's been extended to another year for manufacturing companies for investment in new plant and machinery over 3 years. Just one point here, it doesn't depend on the base year of the company. So it's capital expenditure incurred up to the next year, i.e. 30 June 2024. So it doesn't depend on the base year, it's based on the strict June year, right? The credit didn't apply to companies engaged in the manufacture of alcoholic products. The reason being, when you look at Section 2 of the Income Tax Act, the minute a company is engaged in the manufacture of alcoholic products, it's not classified as a manufacturing company. So the income might be 1%, still it won't qualify as a manufacturing company when you look at Section 2, because it's engaged in the production of alcoholic drinks. Now, with the amendment, if the new plant of machinery is used exclusively for the production of non-alcoholic products, then the credit applies. The question is, what if it's used for both? It can happen. How would MOI control that? I mean, then the evidence would be relevant. And I think the evidence should be such that it cannot be challenged by the MOI beyond reasonable doubt, I would say, because the minute there's a slight doubt, they would say no, in practice no. So that has to be documented, I think, all the way through, especially the first years. But it's at least it creates a level playing field. So all new plant and machinery that was production of non-alcoholic drinks would qualify for the credit. Then another incentive for expenses incurred by companies on child centers, it's to 200%. Again, one question to start with: do those businesses think that those expenses have a business case? That's the starting point. If not, I don't think the incentive itself would prompt businesses to spend towards the objectives. I'm not too sure. But probably, because again today, we are working from home, we have flexibility, so I'm not too sure that would encourage companies to incur such expenses. So the business case would be the driving factor to my mind. Cheaper deduction, first time I've seen it in our country, and to NGOs. The question I have is, would it be a deduction for corporate tax purposes or will it qualify for CSR purposes? I'm not sure myself. The speech talks about deduction, donations are not allowable. It used to be donation made to charitable donation, it's no longer the case. The question is it allowable for corporate tax purposes or it qualifies for CSR purposes? That's the question which I don't really appreciate how to answer you. So there's a maximum of 1 million rupees, but again it's generous. So you spend for 1 rupee, you get deduction for 3 rupees. So I think that can be an incentive for companies to donate more to NGOs. Then we have another double deduction on expenses for new campuses, local training institutions. But again, those are substantial expenses. So no business would do it unless there is a business case to start with. But at least they will feel the benefit of fraud, especially if they are in tax position, paying position, and they are not in tax losses. Another benefit on triple deduction for employees, that too would encourage employers to recruit disabled employees. But how many disabled employees would employ? I mean, you would look at productivity, so probably employers might make an extra effort, but time will tell whether that measure would have prompted employers to employ more disabled employees. Then we have a deduction for companies employing women in the employee scheme. That too, I don't know whether it would be enough to prompt those employees to employ more women. There's another one, which is a funny one, which I think, personally, I don't quite like it the way it's been legislated. A few years back, it's interest on debentures, bonds, sukuks, for investment made into renewable projects. That exemption only applies if it's approved by the MRA. So the MRA is supposed to administer the revenue laws. But now we're saying that exemption depends on the MRA. And where it's nasty to my mind, what if the MRA doesn't approve it? What do? You don't have any legal recourse. You are done. If the MRA doesn't approve it, it will be taxable. By experience, the one case which I did, which was clear-cut to my mind, it was a real challenge. I waited for weeks and weeks before the exemption was granted. So two measures then there. One, it's been widened to cover any sustainable projects, so not just renewable energy projects. Two, for investment made as in an overseas entity as well, but just insofar as it concerns renewable projects. Now, the thing about it, we are looking at a debt instrument here, right? And what would happen in practice? Again, it's subject to approval of the body. Everyone wants to gain comfort. What are the funds being used? What's the destination? So you need to have access to that foreign entity's records. How do you do that on earth? You're providing debt, you're not a shareholder. How on earth did you convince the MRA that the funds are being put towards the intended purpose? How do you do that in practice? I don't know. But is it good, that measure? It seems good to start with, but we have many challenges. But does it mean that the tax bill will decrease? I'm not sure. How about investment made by life insurance companies? We have a RT80 million tax, is the higher of. So it's 10% of the profits attributed to the shareholders. So if they have the interest income from those projects, they won't benefit from the exemption. So no matter if it's been approved, they won't benefit. Let's take another example. A GBL or domestic company invests outside of Mauritius. Right? First challenge is, how do we get the approval? Who has to seek the approval? The GBL company, as an investor in the debt instrument, the issuer. The issuer is outside of Mauritius. How can that issuer be compelled to respond to the MOA? So the issuer, the merchant party, the merchant investor, does he have to seek the approval of the MOA? It's complicated. But let's say that investor receives interest income. Mind you, that interest income, it may be taxed in another country. So the exemption covers the merchant exemption. So you may have a local exemption, but not a foreign tax exemption. So you're done on the foreign tax you suffered in that source jurisdiction. If the interest is exempt, let's say Maurice accepts exempt, then you can't credit it because you're saying the interest income is exempt. Is it a better outcome? Second scenario, let's say the interest is exempt in the source country. It's exempt in the source country, it's exempt in Mauritius. So it's not taxable neither in Mauritius nor in the source country. Is that good news? It depends. Then you must investigate further. Why is that other country granting exemption? If the exemption over there is like Mauritius, are trying to encourage people to invest into sustainability projects, then it might be that the interest would have been taxable at the rate of 20%. It might be the case. But then that country got an exemption of 20%, that's why it's exempt. So in that scenario, the question is, can the merchant investor treat the interest as taxable? The merchant investor will get a tax-paying credit interest of 20%, which it can utilize if you have put a foreign source income. So that exemption, it depends. You can't generalize. And in that respect, what will happen to the life insurance company? I think it can pay the credit. It has suffered tax. So it looks like for a life insurance company, investing out of Mauritius might be an option. Because investing in Mauritius, the exemption won't apply. So that's all on the VAT interest exemption. We have a reduced rate of 3% for companies engaged in the manufacture of medical devices. The next question is, what if that company is engaged in the manufacture of many devices, one of which is medical devices? So then you have to apportion the expenses, you get into all those challenges, direct expenses, indirect expenses. And mind you, looking at past few weeks, the approach of the MOA is just something which I can't understand. I mean, totally inconsistent. So if ever you have the scenario where a company is engaged in the manufacture of medical devices plus other products, make sure you have the analysis which you can support, which is consistent. Ideally, have it reviewed by the auditor or some independent party, because I'm seeing MOA can easily challenge it. Another point which I think was it required to clarify is on the sale of fuel to airline companies. I think we all have, not we all, some people have the notion that if you export, the importer has to go outside of Mauritius. So we can export to a Mauritian resident company. That's possible. So with that amendment, it's clear now when those companies they sell fuel to a local airline company, it qualifies for the reduced rate of 3% export of goods. So I think that is probably provides more certainty to those entities. Another measure is the reduction of the levy for telephony services. And now, if the company has a loss, it still has to be the levy. And if you think about that, it's like a turnover tax to me. It's like a turnover tax. If the company incurs a loss, it has to pay the telephony levy. So it's a turnover tax. And what will happen when we try to understand the interaction of that tax with the covered tax and the Pillar 2? Then I think it won't be covered tax 1. Yeah, but it's a turnover tax. Many measures on VAT. What's unclear to me, the minister said, only in one case he's shifting an item from exempt to zero rated. Other cases, he may say, I'm removing VAT musical instruments, noodles, toothbrushes, number of basic necessities. With those items, zero rated or exempt, I don't know. Looking at it from a perspective of the consumer, would have favored a zero rate, but we don't know how it's going to legislate that. In the annex, there's nothing, no guidance provided on whether those items will be exempt or zero-rated. That's on VAT. There's another exemption in the 9th issue on the construction of building for primary and secondary education. Those constructions will effectively be zero-rated. Why I say zero-rated? Because it's a taxable supply, but then the party, the contracting party, the client doesn't pay VAT. So the registered person doesn't lose his right to claim the input tax. That's why effectively it's a zero supply. But the challenge is, what if that person has an excess VAT? Can that excess be claimed as a refund? That's what the challenge. Because when you read the law, it doesn't say it's zero-rated. When you read the section on refund, it has to be in the context of a zero-rated supply. Here, it's the outcome, it's a zero-rated supply, but strictly speaking, it's not a zero-rated supply. But I think, and that one, I think MOI understand, and they would grant the refund based on experience. We also have the e-invoicing project, which was announced last year, which is already in force. What I'm looking here is more consultation. We don't know what MOI is doing. Apparently, MOI is meeting with software service providers to make sure that it's compatible. So now, MOI will be aware of all the transactions on a real-time basis. But the challenge we have is many of the clients that have operations around the world, they have their own system, own software, which has been approved by various jurisdictions like UK, India, and they are asking us, well, would the MOI agree to our software? How do we implement that measure? Based on the conversation I had with one of the directors, he's the one leading this project, it looks like yes. So I'm hoping that a consultative approach would continue in that respect. We will have the reiteration of the tax area settlement scheme to the extent that the tax is justified, then it's a welcome measure. Then I think I would encourage people to implement it. But also, I think if there is agreement subsequent to this kind of MOI, I think on that one, generally MOI would support to have all the interest and penalties waived. So that deadline, the same as previous year, so we'll have to submit the application by the end of December, plus pay the tax by next March. Another, I think, welcome measure, I think an interesting one for those in the rural sector, enforcement of tax for PCCs and BCCs, the sales will be affected. So MOI won't be able to enforce tax payment from another seller. And that is irrespective of the fact that the company is taxed not on a single basis as a company as a whole. So you can blend the loss and the charge taxable profit. That doesn't mean that when it comes to enforcement, MOI will enforce assets on the seller. So that I think that's something I think we must thank the minister. There are loads of powers being granted to the section of exchange information. I don't think we can try it legally. Compliance-wise, withholding tax is extended to 2 categories. For insurance companies, for payment made to fire beaters and spray painters, but only to the extent that those vehicles are for policyholders, not for their own vehicles. So that again will increase the compliance for those insurance companies. I think going forward, everyone wants to track those non-compliant taxpayers. Payment to inter-integrated designer, that too is within the scope of withholding tax at the rate of 5%. The one thing which is not clear, which is not provided in the annex, is what happens if an individual is not engaged in any business. Does he have to apply the withholding? I don't think so. I'm hoping that in the bill that will be dealt with, so that when you pay a decorator on a personal basis, you won't have to apply withholding tax and now start submitting returns. There's another clarification on input tax when a registered person registers on a voluntary basis. Currently, whenever a person registers, any input tax for the past 3 months, it can be taken as by way of credit, even though there's no VAT invoice, provided you have a certificate from a register. The auditor will verify the input tax with the invoices, considering declaration. That is possible. So I'm not too sure what that measure is about. I think a lot can be, much more can be done on input tax, especially on capex, which might have been incurred more than three months ago, which is still in use. And talking about capital, probably it's a time for us to review the regime for capital expenditure, because currently the law on the input tax is determined at the time of acquisition. So when the mix of supplies change subsequently, there is no corresponding adjustment. So I think that is something we can amend on a going forward basis to make the law fairer, I would say, to all parties. I think to me, the most important bit of this budget is about the amendments and administration. There's one on the appeal system, and it seems that next again, the government saying, well, we'll make the appeal system more efficient. Then another one giving powers to the Director General to appoint an expert. But what kind of powers? What's the scope? And we don't want to end up in a situation where taxpayers are penalized or at a disadvantage. If you ask me, those are the most important measures to me on the administration. And it's just about the income tax act, the VAT, customer excise. You read those measures, I think it's scary, the powers. Even the police can step in now for customer excise. So those various administrative powers, I mean, if I was to write to it on Friday, even coming to Sunday, I wouldn't have enough time to be able to write an objective analysis on the administrative powers. So that's an area of concern, and I'm very direct about it. We need just to be careful, and I'm hoping that all the involved parties can contribute on the administrative side. Otherwise, it's difficult for us, our advisors, to market Mauritius as a country to do business, user-friendly, then forget about Mauritius. I think to me, that's the measure we need to be careful about. And I'm not too sure ministers are aware. And what I'm asking here, if the private sector does consultation, I mean, if MIA is Ministry of Finance, the officers, they don't agree, then for the sake of transparency, tell us. We'll discuss it. But what happens in practice, they don't agree, they don't provide you the basics, they don't write to us. So it's a one-way traffic. We write to them, they don't write back. So that's the bit which I'm sad for the country. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So thank you, Riyad, for taking us through the various tax measures. There's a lot of them. And I think we now understand better the implications for us taxpayers and the companies. So the last panelist is Clencia Pavu. He has a very long biography, so I will try to honor you. So Clancy is the Chief Executive Officer and Senior Partner of HLB Mauritius, which specializes in finance, management, and development. HLB Mauritius is a member firm of HLB Global, the international network of accounting firms and business advisors, which with presence in 160 countries. Clancy is a member of the ACCA and of the ICAPW. He holds an MBA in Global Business Strategy from Oxford University and a degree in Management Information System and Computer Science from IDPM. He is also a certified compliance manager from the Global Compliance Institute of Australia. So Clancy has been a key speaker at different international conferences on finance, tax, structuring, ESG, and offshore business administration. He was recently invited to present a paper at the United Nations General Assembly on the effect of climate change on the local hospitality and tourism industry. He has served on the ROSG of the World Bank for the review, design, and implementation of the accountancy and audit profession in Mauritius. He has also served a term of office as the president of Business Mauritius and actually sits on various boards and strategic committees in both the private and public sector. Clancy devotes a good amount of time to social work, to not-for-profit businesses, and to NGOs which focus on education and poverty alleviation. During his leisure time, Clancy enjoys his passion as an artist painting in oil and acrylic. So Clancy will intervene on general impact of budget proposal on business enterprise, measures for the SME sector, and meeting Mauritius sustainability agenda. So I will leave the floor to Clancy.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, dear friends, accountants, colleagues. Very happy to be with you this evening. And I decided to make a short presentation, right? So I'm going to go in front in order to see what I'm going to show you, right? And a short presentation to bring you, right, because I've got three themes to talk about the effects of the budgetary measures on business in general, see to what extent it really affects and it really will boost the SME sector, and most important, and to see what is going to be whether the adequacy, whether there is adequate measures proposed in terms of sustainability. We know well that today is the Environment Day, right? And it is very important that sustainability is in all the books, in everything that we do now, right? And we have got 2030 as the agenda for our net zero. So we are only 7 years ahead of us. So how will we be able to attain it? Are those measures which have been proposed adequate for us to sustain and to be able to achieve that agenda? So I'm going to comment on that. Before, I would like to make a general comment on the budget, listening to what Pierre was saying before, right? When you think about 64 billion rupees sent in social support, right, which is very good, it seems that the Minister of Finance has divided the population in three. There is the big population, babies, mother, right, everything coming in with the kush, etc. Then there is the silver one, which is the one which is at the top, right? So we have to take care of our more elder population. And then the one in between are those who are going to work, right, in order to bring the money onto sites. So we can say that on a general basis, this budget is a crafting of social and welfare economics, isn't it? Right? So people will get 15,000 rupees as a minimum, right, salaire ou revenu garanti. They would be, right, all our people at the top, right, it's been senior people will get a bit more money, 65 years old, so you have to run to get 2,000 rupees more. Maybe next year more money still, right? So, and then, of course, right, there will be in the middle, there will be the big enterprise, the small enterprise, and we'll see how it goes around. Okay, I'm going to bring up, I have to go a bit back into the trajectory. We have to understand the trajectory of the economy from COVID, how it has behaved, to understand the effect on business now, right? And I've got three things to talk to you. The general impact on business enterprises. There would be the measures for SME sector. We're going to analyze that and see the adequacy about that. And we'll talk about sustainability, right, the sustainability agenda, and where do we stand now. Now, the three fundamental pillars which the Minister put emphasis upon has been the economic side, the consolidation of economy, social integration, and the environment. There have been three main things. We understand that welfare economics turn around, as I've said, right, the grey economy, the pink economy, and so on, alleviation of poverty, guaranteed minimum, greater participation of women, right, which is a very good point, right, going forward. And then there have been a lot of what we call socialists and openness, right, because there have been abolishment of solidarity levy, right, while dividends is an exempt income, right, business facilitation, right, and also a lot of measures to attract foreigners, and also to retain talents here, right. I think that the solidarity levy abolishment is a good thing in advance, right, in retaining talents within the workforce. Now, in terms of the fundamentals, Pierre has gone into that, but probably I'm going to go a little bit in terms of graphic to see exactly, this is the trajectory. If we understand what has happened since 2019, we will
will understand now what is the effect of where we are going. Because the economy is already back on track. All the sectors are back on track. Quand on va au fond du gouffre, quand on touche le fond, on est obligé de monter. Hein? Okay? Et ça, on sait très bien. Right? And we are going to see how this trajectory has been going on. This is just to give you a bit of the figures. Pierre commented on the 8% coming in. Right? We made 8.7% 2022-23. And then there will be 8% next year, 23-24. And then, of course, you are going to get a period of stability and stabilize at 5%. Right. So I'm going to go directly on those graphics instead of showing you the things. So revenue, right, taxes would be 87%, right, social contribution 8, grants 1, and other revenue 4. Taxes will be the main revenue. And here we see the social protection 34%, which is the heavy weight, right, in the expenditure, right, of the economy, right, of the GDP, which is the heavy weight which is being given. What Pierre was saying is very right when he said it is very good to give money to the poor, right, but are you sure that it is really going to the poor? And secondly, so far that we don't do, right, we don't do the allocation in terms of who should get it and should not, right, so there will be money spent in it lavishly, right? So when you get across the board, it doesn't have the same meaning as the help that you want to give to people. Look at this graphic, it is very telling. Now we understand the trajectory. Right? So GDP in 2019 went down by minus 14.6%. Right? This is the point where we reach down here. Quand on touche le fond, on est obligé de monter. Hein? Right? So we are going up, right? And here, right, we are going to reach the level of, right, 1232, 8.7. And of course, right, we see the bigger increase, and then we're going to reach 8, and then to go down. Right? So we see the trajectory which has happened. And of course, the effect on the economy is now that we have all the sectors have grown to the level that is required. And this is why we are going to grow with an 8, probably more also, depending on how this budget is managed within it and how business is going to react to it. Right? But it is a good thing to think about budget deficit also, but it's on the reduction side. There is also the projected world inflation rate, right? So you will see when you compare Mauritius to the different parts of the world, emerging market at 20%, Middle East and Central Africa a bit more than 15%, Mauritius we are around 11%, right? This is in March 2023, right? Which means that we are doing very well, right? We are doing very well, the economy is back on track, right? And really, right, we have got hopes that it is good. So we can say that generally, the good factor, the good feel factor is here. Right? So we cannot say, right, whatever we are going to say all about the budget, there is a lot of measures which pave the way for continuous growth because we are already on track. Right? Good feel factor is here with us. Right. Business challenges post-pandemic. When we went out of the pandemic, we were faced with 4 challenges. First of all, businesses wanted to know, okay, metrics have changed. There is working from home. There are different ways of working. We can no longer have a server on our premise. We have to go on cloud. All these things came to us. There have been changes in business metric. We have regaining the pre-pandemic level of business activities. Everybody thought we have to go back to the level that we were before, right, 2020. The second metric was finance. We remembered, right, that during the pandemic, we said that cash was king. It is still king, right? But there should be a realignment of financial needs in order to build up business growth. The third aspect was economic policies. Everything depends on a regulatory framework, on the strength, the adequacy, and the strength of institution. Right? When you ring up MFSC and you ask for somebody to talk, they send you on a phone, and you call there, you remain there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, nobody replies. And nobody tells you that he's not here, he will call you back. So this is the way that institution is working now. So this is only an example. If institutions are adequately, they can keep up, right, with their quality work. I'm not talking about other institutions, about police and so on. This is not our concern. But when it comes to business, it is important to have adequate and strong institutions around. The fourth one is labor. I think that every business is suffering from that. Our profession is experiencing, right, whether it is in offshore, in in audit and everything, a large shortage in labor, right? So, and we face a paradox. At the same time, they are telling us that there are 7.7% of unemployment. 40,000 people are not working. But when you get the job, the young guys who come to work at your office, you ask him for a big salary. He doesn't want to work a lot. When there is a lot of mechanics to learn, doesn't want to know about that. But what is the salary? What are you giving me? What are the benefits and so on? We all experience that, right? So this is the paradox about the labor thing. You get unemployment on one side, and on the other side, you don't get people to work. Right. Those metrics, I think that this budget has brought a solution to all of them. Right? First of all, we've got the rebound of for example, the tourist industry and the manufacturing industry. But there are evidence that we have already reached we are just on the wave of pre-pandemic already. Right? They are flying high. Manufacturing, right, tourism. We find that the rapid growth of the economy from a negative 14.6 to 2.8 within one single year, right, is evidence that, right, the economy is back on track. Now, all the main sectors of our economy are working at higher level, right, whether it is in banking, insurance, construction sector, ICT, agriculture. I will come back to agriculture in a few minutes. I think there is more things which could have been done and which have not been done, right? And enhancing access to finance also, right? Because rethinking about your finance strategy, there is a lot of things which have been brought together, right? A lot of financing now being put in place, new schemes, financing through IFCM, right? Financing through MIPA, for DBM, a lot of loans there. So finance is available. Support to existing and new development. There is a budget of 2 billion rupees which has been voted for business development. But we have seen, I've gone into the budget, I've gone into the annex, I've not seen what is going to be that business development. So we have to wait and see how that 2 billion rupees is going to be spent, right, for business development. Right. Dealing with the labor shortage, of course, there are good measures. Extension of the prima l'emploi. Please remember that you have to be, the person must not have been working. Actually, as it is, you should not have been working, the person should not have been working for 6 months preceding the employment period. I think when I hear about what you were saying in the budget speech, you talk about 1 year now. The person must not have worked for 1 year and then you can employ the person. This is a bit paradoxal. If you want to give people work, right, if any has lost a job after 3 months, you want to get back, you have to get it into place, right? This is quite something which is going to be a handicap, right, in getting that labor thing going on. Greater openness to foreign labor, right? This we understand there's a reduction of from 60 to 30,000 rupees for foreign labor to come in all sectors, in some specific sectors, and of course, right, the abolishment of the solidarity, right, would possibly, right, stop the brain drain problem. The streamlining of the work permit through the National Electronic Licensing System, right, on the platform, I think is a very good thing, because this is something which has got duration of 60 months or 1 year to get work permits being approved. Right? I hope that this thing is going to happen. So all these measures, they point to the fact that there is, right, a lot of improvement coming in, and I think that business is going to be, right, to be better. Now, very interesting, there has been a talk about the digital rupee. This is going to be a game changer if it is well structured. But we have to wait until November for the rollout by the Bank of Mauritius. This will bring a lot of things. In November 2023, right, the digital rupee will come into place on a rollout basis. This would bring introduction of the rupee with speed up the security for centralized payment, or payment in cash. Right? The introduction of that rupee will lower costs and risk of money dealing in cash, and of course, will have a bit of change in moving out of the traditional banking system. Right? So this is, I've got a lot of hopes in terms of modernizing the economy, but let us see how the structure is going to be done. I think the government won't be able to do it alone. I hope that private sector, right, will have the say in it and how to go forward. Now, support in terms of when you look at the different sectors, the supports are there, right, for tourism. The objective is, 80 billion. Government aims to bring it to 100 billion, right, in terms of revenue in 2024. 500 million to MTPA, it means an increase of 25% to push up the marketing and the to put our country in the limelight. Development of medical tourism, streamlining licenses, and Mauritius plans to be a green certified destination by 2030, which is a very good thing, right? And I think our tourism will get a new dimension. If you look at construction, so DBM would extend the 3.5% concessionary loan, right, to 25 million, and there is a waiving of mandatory requirement for collaboration between foreign and local contractors. Just looking at the main sectors review, right? Manufacturing, loan scheme, export insurance. The Africa Warehouse scheme has doubled its export towards Tanzania, and this scheme is going to go for another few number of years. And there is, of course, Riyad showed us about the 15% investment allowance, right, for 3 additional years, which should be a good thing for the manufacturing sector. Right. Which sectors have been left out? This is a good question. First of all, when you look at the budget speech, there is no new economic sectors, right, which have emerged from the budget. So the minister is building up the economy on the traditional sectors, and of course that everybody is now on the job. We just hope that the economy is going to be driven out of that. There are new sectors coming in, right? But there are certain sectors which could have, right, brought in more things. Main sectors left out. No new economic sectors, consolidation of existing and traditional sectors. This is the philosophy of this budget. The port development. Do you know that there is a lot of shipping line deserting Mauritius now because of inefficiency in the port handling there? A lot of lines are going, and this is that. There is nothing about the port that I've heard in the budget about how to strengthen this. Blue economy, since a long time, I think for more than 20 years, we've been talking about blue economy, right? Nothing again. The opportunity to develop the blue economy. We are talking of, right, I've got a lot of measures for fishermen in the lagoons. How long are we going to extract this lagoon and not think of new technologies to go off the lagoon? Right? This is mariculture, right? To go into the high seas in order to do that. The time has come for it. There is nothing, right, about the blue economy, right? Agricultural development and diversification. This has been completely left out. You know that today, countries like Zambia, countries like Ghana, they are using AI in order to increase production of agricultural produce at a big rate. Right? On small plots of land, right, they are more effective by using AI. There is nothing in AI. How we should be using AI in order to develop more sectors, and particularly in agriculture. Right? So these are a few examples of probably a few sectors which have got potential and which we could have done. Right? But remaining on the traditional sectors is a good thing, but probably not enough. So the future will tell us. Right? Biomass framework. You know that there is a biomass framework. See, what is it, the biomass framework? To produce energy. Mauritius has taken a commitment to change its emerging mix by 60% by 2030. We are not going to use fossil fuel. We're going to use biomass, solar energy and so on. But what do we have in there? There is a framework which has been developed since 2020. It has gone to Parliament 2 weeks ago. They are going to the Cabinet 2 weeks ago. But yet, nothing in the budget. I would expect things to come up so that we can decide about other means of producing electricity, right, apart from bagasse. So this is another opportunity lost also, right, which I think, right, there have been a lot of emphasis. So in general, I think the feel-good factor is here, right? There is a lot of things which have been there in order to give us the necessary resilience, but probably we will see as time goes on, right? There have been some opportunities lost system. For the SME sector, you know the importance. I would like to underline the importance of the SME sector. 116,000 SMEs, right? We get a contribution of 42% of GDP. Employment is 55% of our total labor force, right? Indispensable pillar for import substitution and lower prices. See what our SME is for, right? And it gives us the 4 main contribution of SME to our economy, right? And now, the key financial support through DBM, I will just list them out for you. Right, the extension of SME interest-free loan scheme, right, to 24. Writing about sending loan for more than 20 years of loan of deceased micro-entrepreneur. Why do you look only at the dead people? Right? It could have been a bit of effort in order for those who have got 20 years, we give them some support. Only if you are dead, then we can do something for you. Right? There could have been a bit of more in that. Introduction of the green energy loan scheme to SME for the production of electricity on the rooftop of their building up to a maximum of 1 million. My God, when I look at that, let's say, at macroeconomic level, right, if they think that they are going to give everyone to put a small, right, a photovoltaic thing on your roof, and you're going to satisfy the 60% change in mix, they are dreaming. It cannot be like this. Ask people to put a photovoltaic, the cost that it is. I would prefer that they bring subsidy in there, and then ask you to do it, right? To do it as it should, right? But still, it won't be enough. And now, people who have got a bit of money, they say, okay, I want this electricity has gone up, I would like to try to see it, put my photovoltaic and produce my own electricity. Okay, you do a feasibility, I've done it at my house, to see what it comes to. It will take me 12 years to recover the money of the investment. Because the money 2 rupees 10 that the CEP is paying you, it has got to make its profit there first, and then what it is paying you is not worth. So how are we going to make up the 60% mix of non-fossil fuel, non-fossil energy, right? And doing on the rooftop, I don't think that really, right, this is going to bring up, right, the thing. Now, loan SME up to 25 billion at a concessionary rate of 3.5. Will still SMEs be able to access to finance without collaterals? 2 months ago, the Ministry of Business organized what you call it, de l'entrepreneur, yeah, right? They make pas un salon, right? They made a bring out all the SMEs. I had the opportunity to be the moderator in that thing, right? And the only thing which came out when the SMEs were saying, DBM came in and put up a list of all the loans they have. They have got 29 loan schemes. Out of the 29 loan schemes, there are only 2 loan schemes that won't require collaterals. One is for 50,000 rupees, the other is for 75,000 rupees. All the other loans, if you do not have collateral, you cannot get access to it. So, my question is, are we really going to put a lot of loan schemes? Will SMEs be able to collect them, to get money, in order to build up, right, the business, in order really to make it resilient? Doubtful still, right? So, this is for SME, right? There are some financial assistance which are being given. They are so micro, I don't want to spend a lot of time, 500 rupees to give SME. I don't know what is going to help them in that, but it would have been better. Public contract below 30 million reserved for micro and small enterprise. Look at this measure, right? Public contract below 30 reserved for micro and small enterprise. When a small contractor, my client, you want to bid for that, they actually make performance bond of 10%. 3 million. You have to bring money for 3 million, or you put his house on guarantee for 3 million to be able to go. So they say, you are giving access to SME to get 30 million, or you can enter into that contract. But if you do not have the performance of 3 million, you cannot participate. So this is a paradox about it, right? And then a lot of measures, so you will have time to go through that, right? Amount of the participation in international fairs. This is a good thing, right, for them to participate in fairs, right? Development of SMEs and cooperatives. I don't know what that means, right? I think that cooperative and so on is not the modern business model that we should be putting money in, actually. Benefit of 10% increase in the margin of preference for public procurement of goods. Very good to say that, but then they don't say that there is a performance bond you have to bring, right? And if you don't have a performance bond, your bank cannot support you, you cannot participate. So there are pros and cons. Things are being given, they are quite general. Let us hope that when it comes to practice, like when it comes to the day-to-day work, there will be more support provided. Right, this is for SME. I'd like to talk about sustainability and the carbon neutral economy. There have been a lot of measures proposed by the minister, but I find that those measures were very fragmented. We have to understand what it means, the sustainability, what it means climate change, right? And I will show you when we talk about United Nations. I had the opportunity last year. Right? Before going to the UN, I had meeting. I wanted to get meeting with the Ministry of Environment to say, my network has brought in a lot of studies. We'd like to bring the contributions. I could not get a meeting with a lot of the minister, I understand, not even with his 2 directors and so on. But the UN said, okay, we want you to come. I made a presentation on the effect of climate change on our hospitality industry. This was a claim, and I made even a report for that. I hope government will read that report someday, right? What is the truth about climate change? Do you know that our shoreline is reducing by 5.36, the minister mentioned it, compared to world standard of 3.3? If you don't do anything, by the end of the century, we won't have any shoreline. It is going away. And the effect is not from inside. It's not us creating it. It is the effect that we are getting from outside. You know why? Because Mauritius emits only 0.01% of the carbon of the whole world volume. But the paradox is that we are classified as the 51st country, the most risky country in the world. We are on the list of those who are going to disappear. Right? But our emission of carbon is 0.01% only. We don't have a problem with carbon emission. We've got a problem with climate adaptation. How do we adapt our island to climate change? This is the question that we have to answer. Right? The paradox remains that with continuous pollution of the big economies, all the greenhouse is hitting on us. The seawater is going up, right? All the climate change happening, they are hitting Mauritius. For the first time in history, you remember in February we had a small cyclone coming in, right? And it wiped off on the eastern coast, right, Belmore and so on, everything that was on the beach. We never had that before. Right? Only one single event, which is a sign that the clock is ticking for us, right? So, what does the budget give us? Mauritius, as a low-carbon country, should not concentrate on lowering our carbon footprint. We should concentrate on adaptation of the island, of our infrastructure, to climate change. Right? The question is, should we buy more buses which are electric, not to emit carbon? Or should we take that money and build up coral reef as mountains to avoid the sea coming in? Because you won't be able to stop it. It is coming up. Should we buy more? Should we spend the money to put more mangroves in Montchoisy? Right? Montchoisy, they are talking about it. I go to run on Montchoisy beach almost every Sunday. But if you see the state of the beach, it is a disaster. Right? So nothing is being done yet. If I do a lot of buses everywhere, right, which is electric, good thing. It is a good thing to put that in the mind of people. But are we solving the problem of sustainability? We're not doing it, because our problem is not carbon emission. Our problem is to solve the problem at the root of climate change. What do we do with the climate change happening? How do we preserve the island? How do we preserve our capital goods? This is the question, right? And you will see that at COP26, Mauritius was present, and Mauritius had, you have to make a commitment to the UN about the amount of contribution you will be doing. Mauritius committed to put 6.5 billion USD in this budget, right, until 2030. It said 4.5 will be spent in adaptation. This is good adaptation, because this is where you have to put the money. There will be 2 billion for cumulative action, such as reducing gas emission by 40%, achieving 60% green energy in our energy mix by 2030. This is very good things. And this is commendable, right, these commitments. So from here to 2030, only 7 years we have. Within 7 years, to change the energy mix to 60% non-fossil is a big challenge. If you don't start now, it will be too late, right? And secondly, if you don't spend the money where it should be, if you think about carbon emission, we have to stop carbon emission everywhere. It's not correct. We have to deal with the chain and adapt ourselves to climate change. So, sectoral development for the manufacturing, there have been some proposal in the budget about sectoral sustainability development. Investment linked to production of materials for renewable energy technologies will benefit from incentive under the premium investor certificate. I don't know what those incentives are going to be. Companies moving towards 100% renewable energy will benefit from a waiver of the electricity prices for the next 2 years. We don't know what our reduction they will get. A 75% subsidy will be provided for the conduct of energy audits, right? So I don't know whether it will be a bâton pour frapper, right, or what is going to be. Financial services, exemption of interest income derived from bonds to finance renewable energy project is being extended to all sustainable projects. Development of carbon trading framework for both blue and green credits by the Bank of Mauritius. These are cosmetic changes. These are fragmented changes in order to really bring the sustainable development agenda right to the right time. In terms of tourism, the Sustainable Tourist Unit will be established within the Tourism Authority with the objective of assisting tourism stakeholders to contribute towards Mauritius becoming green certified by 2030. So it is a general thing, it is a good vision. Right? In the 7 years we're going to become green certified, but how the money is going to be spent and how much money will be spent to reach that, we don't know. Sectoral for development, construction and real estate industry, registration of environment impact assessors with the Construction Industry Development Board to ensure they are fit and proper to carry out the assessment of needs for environmental impact. Non-citizens will be allowed to acquire residential property in a sustainable city and will be granted a residence permit under the Sustainable City Scheme. We've got another new scheme coming in, which we'll call not Smart City, but Sustainable Smart City, right now coming in. Right? And carbon neutral incentive, a lot of fragmented incentive have been brought in. Approval of 1,400 projects representing 136 megawatt of renewable energy, 7% of the country. Right? This is on rooftop, this is on school, this is on state school roofs and so on. So these so much fragmented that I don't really realize whether it is under the mass really to produce the amount of electricity we need. Right? So there are quite a number of things which have been done, which have been proposed. Incentive for sustainability, all these are in the budget. Implementation of an eco-village project by the CEB, right? Plantation of 1,000 trees, right? Plantation, removal of Emmanuel Antil building and put a garden in the center of all this. Good thing to see, but that is a sustainability measure in order to really do a bit helpful, right? And shall we attain the net zero agenda in 2030? That's the big question. So, remember, Mauritius is a low carbon emitter. It should therefore concentrate efforts and funding on climate change adaptation rather than carbon emission reduction. The future will tell us. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Clancy, for this insight on the budget of business, SMEs and sustainability. We will now arrive at another important part of the program. It is the question and answers time. So how we will proceed, I will ask the first question and then leave the floor to you participants to ask your question to the panelists. So we will start with Pierre, and then Riyad, and then Clancy. So that Clancy has time to So our first question is to Pierre. So Pierre, the Minister of Finance has focused on 3 pillars and announced a series of measures around them. The first focus is on strengthening the foundation of our economy. According to the Minister, this can be achieved by addressing the labor shortages, removing the bottleneck of investment, improving the ease of doing business, and developing the key sectors. So my question is, to what extent do you agree or disagree as to whether the Minister has been correct in his diagnosis of the state of the economy and the measures he has taken?
Is it a question about the sustainability of the economy? All that you have said is okay, but probably my feel is all this is looking at the short term. My concern is about the midterm and particularly the long-term sustainability. And I think I have already covered this earlier when I said that there isn't much in this budget about demographics. There are some measures that we are trying to push people to get more babies, but there isn't much about how to. But in actual fact, there is something which is, I am afraid, rather negative. I pointed it out. Large amounts to be paid as pensions. So there we are. We need really a decision, measures to favor good demographics. We don't want the demographic tree to become into B. You see what I mean? So there we are. I think there is more work to be done on that particular subject as regards mid-term and particularly long-term sustainability.
Thank you. You have a question? Anyone? Don't be shy. Then I ask a second question to you, Pierre, if you don't mind. So can you give us some insight about the financing of current budget? Are the proposed budget deficit and the debt ratio sustainable? So can you give us an insight about the financing of the current budget? So are the proposed budget deficit and the debt ratio sustainable? Do you think in the long run our debt to equity ratio is sustainable?
Well, there is some improvement in the budget deficit and in the financing. This is going the right direction, and it is hoped that more and more care will be taken with this so that our public debt doesn't become too high. No, the figures, I have no particular comment to make on this. Let us just remind you that the public sector debt is at the end of this year, of this financial year, is equal to 79%. It is programmed for next year to become 71.5% of GDP. And then in the next 2 years, 5 years, 68.3, 64.8. So this is in the good direction, and it is particularly interesting for our country and for us to know that Mauritius is largely, its public debt is in priority, not in priority, in majority towards Mauritians themselves. So when we have to repay at least, that doesn't affect our reserves. This having been said, there is no reason, we should still be careful not to have this public debt go up again. I think you will all agree with this.
I think of a question for Pierre. Anybody? Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Niazi Ulash. The question I have is, for many years we've seen that there have been many budgets by various governments, and one of the challenges has been that in the implementation of the budgets, there are many initiatives which remain unimplemented. That is a consistent thing we see for many reasons. Now, if we look at governments like the UK government, there's an implementation office, which is a unit which has the responsibility of ensuring that budget initiatives, announcements are actually implemented. With this as background, my question is, what can we do, what do you see, and the question is to you or to anyone from the panel, what it is we could do as a profession to work a bit more collaboratively with the government to help in the implementation of those measures, because undoubtedly a lot of those measures are things which are very interesting. How do we make it happen? How can we help it be a bit more successful?
Yes, I agree with you. It's one thing to announce measures, it's another thing to have them executed. A very good example is the new airstrip in Rodrigo. When I heard this, I said, bravo, we are going to be able to have a new airport there and have Rodrigo connected to the outer world, and Rodriguez too, by the way, and not always relying just on the Mauritian budget. So I said, bravo. When somebody said to me, it was in last year's budget. So I fully agree with you, measures have to be implemented, and I am afraid it's a bit like the reports of the director of audit. So a lot of auditors here. The reports are there, every year is the same thing. So what's the point? So I have nothing more to add.
One comment from my side. We don't have any group-related versions. Group-related. Group-related, yeah? It was announced by one of the finance ministers back in 2002. And there was a task force. We had one meeting, then everybody forgot about it. And we kept asking, well, why on earth don't we have group-related versions? And what we see is, we don't have proper follow-up at the Ministry of Finance. And as I said in my short brief, we don't see a coherent approach in those discussions. And that's why that's the basis of my conclusion, which I don't think the minister realize that we need to tackle this from a policy perspective to start with. I think, to me, my personal view is the ministers, they have to be a role model.
Just a word on this, because I'm going to touch on the SME sector. You know, SME, you give money. DBM has got schemes which are there. As I said, there's a problem of collaterals, but just leave that apart. But giving money is not only the solution. Many times, when we talk about implementation, I've been able to talk, and many, like me, I've been able to talk to the minister or to Ministry of Finance or to SME Mauritius to tell them, accountants can do a lot of job in there. Accountants can prepare, can bring business plan, work together with them, so that bring them to a different level, bring the thing to the bank and so on. When you face a small sum of money, they started it, right? 10,000 rupees, whatever it is, whether you have to work for many hours, for weeks and so on, they will take fixed it. And then you hear nothing about it. So this is the problem of government, right? And this implementation remains an issue, I would say.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Good evening, everyone. Vishal Wangba. My question is a bit in the same line. I mean, for the past few years, right? I mean, the presentation of the budget is a bit more like, you said several times, cosmetic measures. But the budget itself is more cosmetic and more political. Like, if you read the budget itself, there's a lot of things that you don't find. You have to go to the annexures, and It's more like a political thing. Present the budget. There's lots of cliché, photo, and everything. But main thing that we need the budget is really for the economy, to launch the economy, to achieve growth that we are saying, 8%, 5% for the next year. But we see a lot of cosmetics. Now, my friend here said something like maybe I want to stress again and maybe try to have your views on this specific, how we accountants or group like us, we can provide support or help maybe as task force, action force to help, because the big problem is institutions are not functioning because everything is being political. Everything is political. You say, I've heard my friend here says MRA have lots of problems with MRA as they are the one responsible. How we implement it. So there are a lot of things. So we as accountants we are big actors in the economic field. How can we help, or how can we, as a group, MIPA, ACCA, how can we help to make the working environment better? Then we can achieve things. Then we can be seen as an economy in international line. Like we say, our ratings and everything. We can achieve all these things. So we as accountants, as a group, how can we help? This was your question. This is where we want your opinion. Maybe Ben can help.
Thank you. I think the good question and also a good reflection on that. The answer comes from MIPA, the association. Accountants on their own cannot go forward and propose things. Government always talks about public-private partnership to work together and so on. Right? So probably there should be a workforce coming in from business Mauritius to say accountants can play a role in there. But apart from that, I think everything should come from the associations. Right? MIPA is the right body to put up a committee and to say, okay, these are things that we can work together, these are proposals that we can do, right, and so on. MIPA some time ago had a semi-committee which I had the privilege to chair for some time, right? So this is one of the focus area where we can have an association build up its strength and then show that its strength to government, right? And then probably we have to, or MIPA has to take note of that, right, going forward, and help by ACCA, of course.
Yeah, I add that perhaps the body of professional accountants could come to the support of the director of audit to ensure that the job it does every year is taken care of and implemented.
One word from my side. We did volunteer a number of times to support, at least from the tax side. But fortunately, it was kind of issues. This year, we asked government to see if we could have first transfer marketing guidelines, the learning case and transfer marketing. But nothing happened. We sent guidance prepared, for example, by Singapore Provincial Authority. Nothing happened. So it's just one-sided, and to be honest with you, frustrating. I've been trying to do this for many years, and still no meaningful outcome, I would say. At least the way I see it. No, absolutely.
I would like to add what you said. In fact, I think that we must ensure that there are proper implementation. It's good to have a lot of measures. I will talk about the remarks made by you in terms of the MRA, because I've been associated with the MRA long time. Now I'm not at the MRA, I've left the MRA, I'm working on your side. I would like to share with you our accountants who can help to see that there is proper implementation, let's say, of tax measures. You talk about the aggressiveness of the tax officers. We already know
that there are certain measures that are not in law, but in terms of practice, I take one example. You mentioned about the amendment to the return. In the law, when you ask for a refund, there is nowhere in the law where it said that you have to make an amended return. Because when you make an amended return, there are two issues. Firstly, you have to pay penalty because your original return does not count. You have to pay penalty from the time the return should have submitted, the original return. So if it is 4 years back, you pay 4 years penalty and interest. And then it's capped 20,000, okay? But then the time-bound period, it starts once again. And this is not in the law. So I would urge the MIPA, and Sid mentioned MIPA, to make representation to tell the Director General that this is not in the law, but some officers are acting on their own. Probably I don't know where they find the authority. You talk about the substance requirement, that is, we have reduced the 80% exemption to 95%, which will mean that instead of paying 3% for interest for a collective investment scheme, it will come to 0.75%. Then, of course, the substance requirement have to be met. This was a good thing to have substance because, you know, Mauritius is sovereign in that we can give tax holiday, we can give reduction in tax rate, but we must have substance in Mauritius. So substance means that the core income generating activities must be Mauritius. And I think we have worked, when I was at the MRA, we have worked with the profession to come up with a practice note. But what is happening? In practice, the officers are not following what is in the practice note. And this is where MIPA or the association can work with accountants to tell the Director General what you have in practice, your officers are not following. This is an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. Another question?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arjun Kagya. My question to Mr. Jinan and the panel members would be, as you have rightly described, the budget is more on the social aspect. So basically, it's been giving money back to the population. But then I don't see any measures where we are countering inflation. Inflation is an evil which the whole world is impacting, and taking into account the fact that the MPC will be meeting in 2 weeks' time. So any increase in interest rate would undermine all the money that is being given back to us. So I would like to have your views on that. Thank you.
Well, you know that inflation is largely imported. I don't think one would go against that statement. That being said, yes, it is also sometimes worsened by all the manipulations. I don't want to be pessimistic, I don't want to be wrong and méchant about this word, but what BOM has to do, lowering the value of the rupee when we are not having enough international reserves. And this, of course, adds on to inflation. So, the point you raise is that what we need is good practices so that we are not forced, not good practices. What we need really is more local production. And this is an opportunity for me. I think the point was made, but perhaps there was not much in the budget about local production. One could always have more and more, but I think there is an effort about agriculture. And this is at least one of the points where the minister is on a good wicket, and he started it last year. More agriculture. But this has really to be put into practice, not like the report at Rodrigue. And there are a lot of proposals in the budget, so we need to have more local production, particularly agriculture, whether it is livestock or plantations or whatever. But I share the point raised, I think, which was raised right now. Nothing about the blue economy, which is really really a push. So if we continue like this, having large import bills, which become difficult to cover by the export proceeds, then we are in for the value of the rupee going down, which means inflation no longer, not only therefore imported inflation, where there is not much we can do, but also locally produced. And about imported inflation, may I bring in something which is in my mind, been on my mind for some time now? I take an example. We tend to say that we are self-sufficient in chicken meat. Yes, we are. But what do these chicken eat? A lot of food imported from probably Argentina or places like that. So is this self-sufficiency? And that's why I dare to say, but I know that I am on difficult ground, I dare to say that there should be an effort, and now we are living economics, that we are going into governing the country. There is an effort to be made, to my mind, for Mauritius to be nearer to its African neighbors, and more particularly to its large neighbor, which is Madagascar. I think this should be part of the strategy, but nothing, of course, in this budget. In fact, it goes beyond the budget. It should be a decision of our governing leaders. We need to try. Of course, I may be totally wrong, and Madagascar may not want to deal with us. But a way of fighting against imported inflation is to have a better relationship with our large neighbor. And don't forget, a few years ago, we had this famous import from Madagascar. Repair to Madagascar. When I said this the other day to some younger people, they looked at me, they did not know what it was. To tell you that was a number of years ago. Repair to Madagascar. Why was it possible then? Why is it not possible today? And I'm not saying that this is only our fault. It may well be the fault of our Malgache friends. No comment on this. But this is the sort of thing we should be trying to do instead of depending on imports from very, very distant countries. So I have come back to your question. Inflation is important. What do we do in order to try and reduce the weight of that imported inflation?
Thank you, Pierre. If you don't have one last question, we have time for one last. Anybody?
C'est à propos des mesures annoncées par Pôle emploi et jusqu'à une certaine période, devraient être remboursés à la fin. Ils ont dit termination of employment. Est-ce que quand un employé soumet sa démission, est-ce que l'annual leave devrait être remboursé? Ça. Et ensuite, ils ont parlé de semaine, la semaine de 4 jours. Voilà. Donc, quand on voit les entrepreneurs, eux, pour avoir une entreprise profitable, l'entrepreneur doit travailler sur une période de 15 mois dans une année pour payer quelqu'un un salaire de 13 mois, et que l'employé travaille que 9 mois. Donc, est-ce que la semaine de 4 jours sera bénéfique pour les entrepreneurs?
Je pense que la question est beaucoup plus d'un côté légal, hein. Mais quand même, je crois, ce que j'ai retenu, moi, dans la différence entre ce minimum salaire avec, donc, pour arriver autour de 15 000, dans le mode du make the difference. Donc, je veux dire, c'est le gouvernement qui va payer la différence. Hein. Donc, on a.
C'est pas la question, c'est par rapport aux mesures annoncées pour l'emploi des autrement capables.
Handicapés, je veux dire, des autrement capables.
Ouais, est-ce que ça s'applique aux employés autrement capables et existants? C'est-à-dire à partir du 1er juillet.
L'application qui va nous dire, hein, difficile de répondre. Il faut qu'on voie comment ça va s'appliquer dans la pratique.
Et les autres points semaine de 4 jours.
Thank you for the questions and thanks to the panelists. I would like to invite Kamala Sadio, who is the consultant at MIPA, to have the closing speech. A big applause for him.
Good evening, everyone. We have had very interesting news from here about the budget, economic outturn, and the principal measures, especially in terms of social. We had talked a bit about the tax measures, and finally, Nancy talked about a bit on the SMEs and other impacts and other measures. What we can say about this budget is that there are initiatives. Most of them was about creating that feel-good factor, though there are, as Nancy rightly pointed out, there are no real new development for new sectors, which I think is something that is really important right now today, with the new generation as well aspiring to something different. I would like to say one thing. Budget speech, don't forget one thing, budget speech is not something that is final. It will be subject to discussions in Parliament, practitioners, and then maybe there will be changes and there will be new measures coming up. How this will be interpreted by the various regulators is also something that we'll have to see when the times come to that. I think most probably, together with ACCA, MIPA probably will partner with us and will have a new session once the Finance Act is voted, and we'll have more clarity on the measures and how these will be implemented by the various authorities, especially the MRA, as we have pointed out. That's one thing. But secondly, a word of caution. Do not rush into making decisions based on the budget. That's very important. You'll have to wait and see, because there are quite a few things, I think, coming up. And I think MIPA has a very important role to play, and that would be interacting between the accountants themselves, the government, and the various agencies, in order to make sure that our voice is heard in order to further develop the economy. So with this, I would like to thank all of you for having come here. I would like to thank our three distinguished speakers, Pamela, who has been a very good moderator, and of course, a very big thank you to ACCA for having partnered with MIPA on making this possible. Thank you, everybody.